You are a worthless parasite and you will come crawling back for our money within a single month. That is exactly what my older brother spat in my face as my parents proudly watched, kicking me out of the family with absolutely nothing but the clothes on my back. They mocked my misery. They completely believed they had broken me. But they were entirely unaware that the ruined patch of dirt I bought just to survive held the absolute power to legally destroy their $300 million legacy. Thank you for watching this video. Before I take you back there, do me one small favor. Take a second to like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is where you are. It helps more than you know. My name is Sloan. I am 34 years old, and I spent my entire youth acting as the invisible workhorse for a family that treated me like dirt. For 3 grueling years, I surrendered my peace of mind to save the logistics division of Sterling Vanguard, my father Vance's massive real estate empire. I stayed at the office until 2 in the morning every single night, analyzing complex data sets and restructuring failing supply chains. I saved the company millions. My father had explicitly promised me a promotion to vice president as my reward. I genuinely believed my hard work would finally force them to love me. But love is not a currency my family trades in. During the most crucial executive board meeting of the year, my brother Declan stood up and presented my entire 3-year overhaul as his own strategic master plan. He had simply deleted my name from the title slide and replaced it with his own. He possessed enough manufactured charm to fake his way through the room, soaking up the profound admiration that I had earned. I looked at my father, expecting him to stop this blatant theft. Instead, Vance beamed with staggering pride. When the presentation concluded, my father officially named Declan as the new vice president. I marched into my father's office to demand justice. Vance simply sighed. "Sloan, do not be so emotional. Declan has the charisma to lead. You just need to stay in the shadows and keep being a team player." In that exact moment, the invisible string keeping me tied to their approval completely snapped. I realized I would never be anything more than a disposable servant in their kingdom. I packed my belongings into a single cardboard box and walked out. I went to my bank and withdrew my entire life savings. I had exactly $1,000 left to my name. I drove to the absolute edge of town and purchased a toxic, rotting gas station that had been abandoned since the 1980s. It was a rusted environmental nightmare sitting on a massive lot of cracked asphalt and overgrown weeds. But it was mine. That Sunday, I walked into the upscale restaurant where my family was celebrating Declan's stolen promotion. I handed my father my formal resignation and placed the deed to the gas station on the white linen tablecloth. Declan threw his head back and laughed loudly enough to draw stares from the wealthy diners. He called me a pathetic disgrace. Vance officially fired me, stripped my inheritance, and terminated my health insurance on the spot. My mother, Genevieve, looked at me with utterly profound disgust, claiming I was an absolute embarrassment to her social circle. She told me I was dead to them. I walked out of that restaurant into the freezing night. They thought they had buried me, but they did not know they had just handed me the shovel to dig their corporate grave. I moved into the abandoned gas station. I slept on a cheap canvas cot in a back office stained with decades of grime. I had no running water and no electricity. I woke up before dawn every single morning, my muscles screaming in agony, to drag heavy rusted car parts out into the blazing sun. My hands were soon covered in angry, bleeding blisters. Every time I felt like collapsing, I remembered the cruel sound of my brother laughing. That memory was pure fuel. It kept me swinging a heavy sledgehammer until my vision blurred. I was demolishing a moldy drywall in the storage room when the hammer struck something entirely unexpected. A massive, deafening metallic clang echoed through the cramped space. Hidden completely behind the ruined plaster was a massive solid steel fireproof vault. I hired a discreet professional locksmith to crack the rusted dial. When the heavy door finally groaned open, a rush of perfectly preserved air washed over my face. The vault was packed with an absolutely immense collection of pristine vintage automotive neon signs. I contacted a private broker who eagerly wired me $250,000 in cash for just a fraction of the collection. I was no longer starving. But the true treasure was hidden in a battered metal ammunition box on the bottom shelf. Inside were yellowed parchment contracts from the 1980s. The eccentric previous owner had legally purchased the exclusive subterranean water rights for the entire 1,000-acre valley surrounding my property. Those massive rights were permanently attached to the deed of my gas station. Sometimes, the very garbage people throw away contains the exact key to their ultimate undoing. Less than 48 hours later, my father and brother hosted a massive press conference. They proudly announced the launch of Evergreen Summit, a staggering $300 million luxury resort and exclusive gated community. The massive digital renderings displayed sprawling golf courses and cascading artificial lakes, all situated directly in the barren valley behind my gas station. Their blinding hubris was completely staggering. They had pre-sold millions of dollars in luxury waterfront estates without ever checking the historical chain of title for the subterranean aquifer. They simply assumed the water belonged to the municipal government. They had absolutely no idea that the water table belonged entirely to me. By the end of the week, I had heavy machinery tearing up my asphalt for renovations. Declan drove his sleek silver SUV directly onto my dusty lot. He stepped out wearing expensive Italian leather shoes, pinching his nose at the smell of diesel exhaust. The golden child realized my industrial logistics hub was a massive visual blight on the only entrance to his luxury paradise. He pulled out a checkbook, adopting a sickeningly sweet tone, and offered me $100,000 to walk away. I crossed my arms, completely unbothered. My property is not for sale, Declan. Not for $100,000, and certainly not to protect your fragile ego. The facade completely shattered. The mask of the caring brother slipped, revealing the vicious, entitled bully beneath. He stepped into my personal space, his face turning a mottled crimson, and explicitly threatened to use his political connections to condemn my land and crush me into the dirt. I maintained an icy, unbroken stare. He slammed his car door and sped away. The predator trap was officially set. The targeted harassment began immediately. Corrupt city inspectors swarmed my property, issuing entirely fabricated code violations to halt my construction. In the dead of night, anonymous thugs snipped my heavy chain-link fences and hurled heavy bricks through my newly installed glass windows. The local utility department, claiming emergency maintenance, illegally severed my water and power lines. They were trying to suffocate me in the dark. Then, my mother Genevieve arrived. She stepped carefully over the shattered glass in her immaculate designer heels, clutching a silk handkerchief. She pitched her voice into a theatrical tone of absolute maternal heartbreak, attempting to manipulate my reality. "You are clearly having a mental breakdown, Sloane. Just sign the deed and let us save you." I looked at her with an expression as cold as a winter morning. Did Dad's blood pressure spike before or after he paid those thugs to smash my windows? Genevieve gasped, her face draining of color, and quickly retreated to her luxury vehicle. My family thought they were waging psychological warfare against a helpless victim. They did not know I had used my new capital to install high-definition infrared surveillance cameras across every inch of my property. I meticulously documented every single act of vandalism, every corrupt inspector, and every utility truck that did not belong to the city. I backed up the pristine video files to 3 separate secure servers. I was gathering the exact ammunition required to completely annihilate them. The time for playing defense was over. I hired Merrick, a famously ruthless commercial litigator who specialized in tearing apart arrogant real estate developers. We reviewed the historical deeds and quietly filed a preemptive federal injunction to halt all commercial development in the valley. We sealed the court order, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. That moment arrived exactly 2 weeks later at the grand groundbreaking gala for Evergreen Summit. The opulent ballroom was packed with the city elite, wealthy politicians, and heavy-hitting institutional investors. I walked through the towering brass doors wearing a custom-tailored midnight blue silk gown. I radiated absolute, undeniable authority. Merrick walked calmly by my side, carrying a slim leather briefcase holding the nuclear codes to my family empire. When Vance saw me approaching the main stage, Panic completely consumed his features. He frantically signaled his private security to remove me. Merrick stepped smoothly in front of the massive guards. With the lethal resonance of a seasoned attorney, Merrick explicitly threatened them with a catastrophic federal discrimination lawsuit if they touched a legally documented stakeholder. The guards froze instantly. Declan was standing at the podium, sweating heavily under the massive crystal chandeliers, loudly promising his elite investors millions of gallons of pristine subterranean water. I stepped confidently to the center aisle microphone. My voice was cool, level, and utterly merciless. How exactly do you plan to supply millions of gallons of subterranean water to a $300 million resort when you do not legally own the water rights? The silence in the grand ballroom was absolutely staggering. Declan gripped the wooden podium, his knuckles turning stark white as his arrogant smile completely crumbled. Merrick began distributing certified, notarized copies of the 1980s commercial deeds and the freshly signed federal injunction directly to the lead institutional investors. I stared into my brother's terrified eyes. The rights to the subterranean aquifer do not belong to the municipal government, and they certainly do not belong to Sterling Vanguard. They belong exclusively, permanently, and irrevocably to me. Declan completely lost his mind. He snatched the microphone, screaming frantically that I was a jealous, unstable failure trying to extort my own flesh and blood. He loudly bragged that he had the municipal power to squash me and clear the valley by any means necessary. He dug his own grave with every single word. I simply unplugged the presentation laptop from the main audio board and connected my phone. I hit play. The pristine audio recording from my hidden surveillance cameras blasted through the concert-grade speakers. Every single elite guest listened in stunned horror as Declan's recorded voice explicitly detailed his strategy to bribe city zoning officials, fabricate municipal code violations, and illegally sever my utilities. The wealthy investors were completely drained of color. The lead financial backer stood up, his face a mask of profound disgust. He loudly announced he was pulling all capital commitments due to severe estate fraud, gross negligence, and breach of fiduciary duty. He marched out the heavy brass doors, triggering a massive, chaotic exodus. The elite socialites treated my mother like a walking contagion as they fled. My father slumped against the stage, looking entirely broken. The massive empire they built on arrogance was shattered into dust. They thought I was the prey, but they had blindly walked straight into a predator's snare. Exactly 14 days later, a subdued black SUV crept onto the freshly paved asphalt of my thriving commercial property. The firm was facing catastrophic bankruptcy and a massive avalanche of breach of contract lawsuits. Vance, Genevieve, and Declan stepped out into the blazing sun. They looked absolutely ravaged. My father's shoulders sagged, and my mother was completely stripped of her haughty elegance. They begged me to sell them the water rights. They pleaded for family loyalty, the very concept they had laughed at when I was starving. I refused to sell them a single drop of water. Instead, I handed my father a strictly binding, irrevocable commercial lease agreement. I demanded a massive $15 million upfront capital injection, plus 20% of the gross annual revenue generated by the resort in perpetuity. I was becoming their permanent, unyielding landlord. But there was one final, non-negotiable clause. I looked directly at Declan and demanded his immediate, legally binding resignation from the firm, completely forcing him out of the commercial real estate sector for the next decade. Declan cried genuine tears, begging our father to fight me in federal court. Vance did the brutal calculus of sheer survival. He snatched the document, shoved a pen into Declan's shaking hand, and ordered his golden child to sign his professional death warrant. Watching the arrogant bully sign away his entire career was immensely satisfying. Vance signed the lease, and they drove away in complete, utter defeat. 2 years later, I am sitting on the pristine, sun-drenched patio of my highly lucrative boutique travel hub, sipping artisan coffee. I am completely at peace. The elite guests of Evergreen Summit are forced to stop at my property every single day, and every month, my holding company receives a staggering multi-million-dollar royalty check. My toxic family is permanently trapped in a financial prison of their own making. They manage the daily headaches, the demanding clients, and the exhausting upkeep, while I effortlessly collect a massive fortune simply because I own the water flowing beneath their feet. I have absolute freedom and immense wealth that none of their toxic manipulation could ever buy. The worthless parasite they kicked to the curb is now the absolute queen of their valley. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Have you ever had to walk away from toxic family members to protect your own sanity? Share your experiences in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life drama. Stay strong out there.